When the LCS made the decision to buy back both Golden Guardians and Evil Genius's LCS spots, reducing the league to only 8 teams, I know there were some people that honestly were a little bit happy. The fact that talent would consolidate down to 8 teams would potentially make us better on the international stage. And while technically that did happen, we did make it out of Swiss stage in 2023 and 2024. I'm not willing to say that's because of that at all, because at the end of the day, we got out both teams by not having to beat an Eastern team. So I don't think the point that was being made by the community at that time was fair. And I think it's time to bring back a universal push to get back to 10 teams in this league. I know there's a lot of parts to this, and we're going to cover all of them in this video because I want to be full and transparent with everything. But I think it's in the best interest of North American League of Legends if we do get back to 10 teams. First, I want to put the universal push out there that I agree with Sean and Tonin. I had a different idea slightly that would have 3 additional teams and let Sentinels have their slot, and we rotate it every 3 years. But I think genuinely the best idea for this is going to be we have 6 partner teams in the LCS. That would be C9, FlyQuest, Team Liquid, Lion, Shopify Rebellion. Why am I so shit at remembering the last team on this list every time we go through? C9, FlyQuest, Lion, Shopify Rebellion, Team Liquid, and I'm willing to throw Sentinels in there, or maybe Dig, whichever one you want. But the other 4 slots of those 10 are up for promotion relegation every 2 years. We make it just like the system used to be, where 2 teams are subject to promotion relegation at the end of every year. But what this does is it prevents teams like DSG this year, who have to sign people to 1-year contracts because they might get promoted or relegated, and players don't want to take those deals. We'll get into the player side in a minute here, because I will say that players are not entirely blameless despite all the conversation that Dokla and crew are having here. 2-year cycles should allow orgs to make better long-term decisions, and realistically, if they are improving as an org, they should not have to worry about beating the top teams in Tier 2. Because the reality is, if we were to just take the 2 teams that were competing for promotion relegation this year against DSG, it would be a roster of pretty much all former pros for now. That Luminosity squad that was vying for that spot literally just is all 5 former pros. But that's not the point of all of this. The point of having 10 teams in the league is that it allows for more opportunities for players to have starting roles in this league. Because as it stands right now, the offseason's kind of atrocious for LCS in the sense of we have a lot of people that are teamless. Just looking at top lane and jungle, because I think those are the 2 roles that are really egregious this offseason. The rest, not so much. In top, you have Dokla, Bwipo, Impact, Surdy. If you go down to Tier 2, you technically have Fake God as well. That's 5 people that could all technically be starting on an LCS team, and there is 1 slot available on Sentinels, and that's it. Everything else is taken right now. And we should not be losing our finals matchup. Now, Bwipo's an entirely different situation. That one is a little bit harder to touch. But Dokla should not be out here saying, hey, Dignitas is the only offer that I got this offseason. That's it. That's a wild statement. You go to jungle, it's Yuji, Odilan, Shaden, XU, and then if you dip it down into Tier 2, you technically have Perry and Tomio as well. That's enough, alongside assuming you import for the other 2 teams that would come into the league, because we always import 2 players at minimum on each roster. That's enough, and that's not even mentioning that as of right now, which I'm assuming they get signed, maybe they don't, FBI and Ayla are also without a team. Like, the biggest problem of all this and what's leading to this conversation is the fact that 100 Thieves goes to Worlds. Obviously, their org's not going to exist next year, and 3 out of the 5 players cannot find a team. The one that did, obviously, with Quid, and then Rivers doing his mandatory military service. That should never be happening. We shouldn't be losing one of our teams that goes to Worlds in this type of situation. And it's caused by the fact that we don't have enough teams in this league. So obviously, going to 10 teams opens up more opportunities for players. Make sure that stuff like this does not happen. However, obviously, there are some drawbacks to this that we do have to talk about. The first one being relevant to Dokla in this situation, where technically, yes, he did get an offer from a team. Now, would I personally sit here and tell you to accept Dignitas's offer after seeing what they have done historically with Surdy, with some of the players that they bring in and say, this is going to be the face of our franchise, and then they cut him after a split? No. Well, yes, Jonathan is going to be the GM, and I hope that does turn around. I'm also not going to sit here and say you need to be the first one to fall on that sword and find out. I have a feeling that Jonathan could do good things, but that doesn't mean the reputation of Dignitas is suddenly, better because he's in there, or that players are automatically just going to sign because of that, because there are still many others involved with the Dignitas program that are still there. So those thread lines are still there and looming. So while I get it's kind of hypocritical in some people's eyes to not take the offer that is on the table, the reality is it is also Dignitas. And when you go to 10 teams, there could potentially be more Dignitas. Imagine Immortals still being here in the LCS. Would you tell somebody to go to Immortals or Dignitas? The reality is most people would probably say no. That is on Riot, or at least promotion relegation in theory, to make sure that we are getting rid of these orgs that should not be in the league. If promotion relegation's there and these orgs are subject to it, fine. Dignitas being protected by franchise rules makes this one tough. Because otherwise, in theory, you should be able to displace them. Like, if we have 2 teams up for promotion relegation, we should be able to kick one of them out in theory. Like, if they really are that bad at building a roster, then people just don't go to them. And eventually, they are phased out of the ecosystem, or at least phased down into tier 2. But that's not saying that we wouldn't have a repetition of some of these things happening. The reality is, for promotion relegation, the majority of the orgs that you are going to get that promote up are typically just the ones that have the most amount of money and have the ability to fund a decent squad. That doesn't mean that you're getting the best orgs in those situations. But if you hit one gold mine out of, 5 or 6 duds over the course of 3 years, I'd say it's worth. And again, players are getting opportunities at the highest caliber, which could then promote them up to your top teams within the league. There is a natural pecking order that will always exist here. The second thing, as it relates to Dokla in this situation, is the money that comes with this. Because there's 2 important falses. One, the repercussions of having 10 teams in the league from a global revenue pool situation. And second, the salary impacts. Starting with the global revenue pool, which will then feed into the second one. In order to get this approved, I'm assuming it would need global LoL esports approval. Like, I'm assuming John Needham and Chris Greeley at the top would have to approve the expansion, because technically you are divvying up the global revenue pool of all revenues that go together for the LCK, the LEC, and the LCS, and I think the CBLOL and LCP. I know the LPL is the only one that I think is not in the GRP. You are technically adding another team which divvies up the amount of money that's being split across. And there's not a guarantee that the LCK would be okay with adding that in and therefore technically taking away from their money. I don't know if it's like distributed from a regional point of view and then divvied up within the teams. Like, say the LCS has like a better year, we get a higher cut of that GRP. Like, is an additional team, is that just like a cut of our LCS and North American revenue, or is that a cut of the overall revenue? Because that's going to be impossible to solve and like very difficult to deal with. I don't quite know what to say on that one. Our hands might be tied, other than just asking for Mark Z to be the voice of pushing for this. I'll get to what we need to do as a community towards Mark Z and beyond here in a minute. But under the common agreement that we all get, that you will have less money going to each of the teams in the LCS, so all the other teams need to sign off on this, that will have a ripple effect on players as well, where salaries are dropping even further. And the rumor right now is that salaries are already close to minimum wage or minimum league salary for these bottom teams, including Sentinels, including Dignitas, and DSG. I hope everybody understands that if we add 2 more teams, you're playing at league minimum. The trade-off to that might actually be that you have to get the league out of Los Angeles in order to reduce that league minimum further, which players might not like. You might sit here and say, okay, well, I'm already playing for $75,000. If league minimum drops to, say, $50,000 because we go out to Chicago and there's not as much restrictions on that, why would I play for $50,000? Well, that's your choice of being a pro player. Like, I hate to tell you this, but you are at the mercy of the market around you. And we don't have the eyeballs to be drawing in the contracts that the LCK does. You as a player have to take responsibility for trying to help grow this league and grow the revenues around us and grow the spotlight so that we can have more money, which raises your salary. You play a part in that. Any pros that are seeing this video, okay? Post content, be more vocal, do more interviews, be around during the season beyond just locking yourself away playing games. Those are all things that you have to take responsibility for, that we as fans and the league itself cannot control. So when it comes to more opportunities, we have to be under the understanding that those opportunities are going to be for a lower salary and for less money. And if players are okay with that, then fine. Again, I want to be on a united front. Myself, Toad, and everybody else. We all agree that we want 10 teams. We just have to understand all the repercussions that come with that. I do, and I'm willing to say that. Oh, obviously, I don't really have a horse in this race. Like, I'm not dropping my own salary by asking for 10 teams in the league. If anything, I'm increasing it because content creation becomes more of a gold mine. But I think it gives more opportunities to people, which we are currently asking for, and potentially leads us to the possibility of flushing through some GMs and making sure that we have the right people in the space that we want to be here. We also need to make sure those of us that are in the space are holding people accountable if they're making terrible decisions. You got to call teams out, call general managers out if they're doing bad things. I'm proud of XU, for example, after he got booted from Dignitas this past offseason and was on DSG. He came out and said, yeah, Bakery was the problem in Dig. Good. Be vocal about this stuff. We got to call out the bad apples. We have to be willing to say it. And the final drawback with having 10 teams is that it will probably affect our international performance. We will be spreading our talent out across even more teams, which will have ripple effects, which will mean that we will potentially struggle at Worlds and MSI. So again, the focus needs to be on providing the most entertaining domestic product that we possibly can and everybody working together. Now, is that perfect world where we expand to 10 teams? Is that going to happen where everybody all of a sudden like understands this and we all work together and do the right things? No, absolutely not. But we have to continue to work and improve the problems that come up with it. So I understand I spent a lot of time talking about the negatives here because that's what a lot of this is. I've obviously been pushing for 10 teams for a bit. I understand there's a lot of drawbacks that we have to make sure that we're all on the same page on. And if you're not willing to accept that and you think that this is a bad push, that's fine. You can advocate for the status quo remaining as is. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to stop pushing for this. And I would advocate for those that feel the same way, that feel like Dokla, that feel like Impact, Surdy, UG, and beyond, or get FBI, Ayla, are all getting robbed of opportunities. You need to be vocal. It is not enough to just say something on Twitter one time and be like, yeah, I did my part. No, we need to make this relevant at all times. Anytime Mark Z makes a social media appears on a video, spam it in the comments. You need to make it known. Similar to the Hex Tech chest lesson that hopefully everybody learned, you have to be on top of this. That's how we got the LCS back as well. You have to push this as much as you possibly can. So I agree with Dokla. It's bullshit, the current situation that himself and some of the other top pros are dealing with in this league, especially as North American residents. But we all need to come together on the solution, which seemingly is 10 teams in the league, 6 partner teams, 4 promotion relegation, 2 up each year for a 2-year contract. If we can all push for that, get teams on the same page. You have to hold your teams accountable. If you're a FlyQuest fan, you need to hold Papa Smithy and the orgs accountable, saying, hey, you need to do this for the betterment of the region. Okay? We all need to be on the same page here. If we can do that, maybe it's possible by 2027, like going into next year. But we have to start that push now, because if it doesn't happen, if our voice isn't strong enough by July, I'm telling you that's probably the timeline, it will not be done. And if by 2027 we are still in this system with only 8 teams, then like I hope you understand this, that's going to be it forever. Like if we have one really good opportunity to make a push for this, and increasing viewership alongside of that would also really help. But we'll see how it goes. Anyways, I've talked about this long enough now. I just wanted to get this off my back and vent a little bit because this whole Dokla thing's been pissing me off, and I've been somewhat unfairly taking it out on some of the teams, when in reality, I think it really just is an issue of, one, the worst team in the LCS not doing their fair shot and us basically having like 7 teams that we want to push people to, and second, the fact that we only have 8 teams in this league. If that changes, maybe more opportunities open up, and we'll see how it goes from there. But we all need to be united in pushing for it.